Hey everybody, Brian Tro here from Mossy Creek Fly Fishing with your Mossy Creek Fly Fishing forecast. Today's date is Monday, August the 16th. So it's been a long stretch since I've been able to do a report. I've been out on the water a lot, and the main reason I'm here is because of rain. So we've been in a pretty extended drought period this summer, and today it's finally raining. It rained over the weekend. And we've got a tropical storm, Fred, that's going to be heading right up the Appalachians and hopefully bringing us rain for the next 2 or 3 days. So that's the good news. Slow, hopefully soaking rain, overcast skies for 3, 4, maybe even 5 days in a row, which is exactly what we need to start to kind of replenish the system. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I want to start up high. We're going to go to the mountains and talk about brook trout. Not a lot of reports coming out of the mountains. Rightfully so. A lot of folks have kind of left the brook trout alone. They're in community pools. They're doing what brook trout have done for thousands of years. When the water gets low, they know where to go. They know where to hide. But unfortunately, when things get really, really low, they get picked on by everything. Eastern water snake. They eat each other. Predators, birds, kingfishers get after them. So as soon as they get that first good shot of water, it can be really good. Big storms that bring a couple inches of rain will bring cover, and it'll bring shelter, it'll bring food, and it'll bring dissolved oxygen into the system. So basically everything they need will be coming this week. If we get a big enough shot to really get those creeks up and moving, one thing that I've found in the past when we have extended drought periods and you finally get rain is don't expect those trout to move out into every little nook and cranny, every little piece of transition water. Some of the water that you were fishing in spring, in between pools where you found fish holding, they're not going to leave those community pools overnight because there's a good chance that those creeks go straight up, and then if we don't get a lot of rain, they're going to come straight back down, and they're not going to get caught moving around. So if we get a chance to go fishing for them, like after these rains this weekend, still focus on those big pools. That's where they're going to be. They're just going to be more apt to eat because they're going to, they don't like being on top of one another, but they won't leave those pools until we have sustained water flows, okay? So not a whole lot to talk about there just because folks really haven't been fishing for them. They're probably going to be anxious to eat anything once the conditions are right. We'll fill you in on that by next week. Down on the spring creeks, the Tricos have been pretty good. There's been good spinner falls in the mornings, so fish have been rising to those consistently. Mossy's been really good for the Tricos. Again, water levels are down, but Mossy's interesting. It's kind of like the opposite of a lot of our streams. In the summertime, when you're on a freestone stream and the water drops, the fish just become more and more exposed, just like our brook trout are. Mossy Creek is so full of vegetation. Things grow up. The banks grow up, the weeds grow up, over the grasses grow up over the sides, giving them bigger undercuts. The moss beds are lush. There's lots of places for them to hide. So even as the water levels drop a little bit on the spring creeks, they have plenty of cover. And then of course the water temperature and the amount of food is always good. And speaking of food, in addition to the Tricos kind of coming and hitting the water mid-morning, the terrestrial fishing has been really, really good. The hoppers are everywhere. There's still beetles everywhere. So those opportunistic fish will be out cruising. Splats from above, as long as they're not too heavy-handed, typically encourage fish to look that way and swim towards their food. One of the better flies that we've been fishing is Schroeder's parachute hopper. Really awesome fly. And the other nice thing about this bug is it pretty much is the size and the shape of the hex fly. The hex fly is going to start coming off. We've already seen a few, but it'll just get better and better over the next month or so. So be on the lookout for hexes. They're typically the last 2 weeks in August, first 2 weeks in September. So, they're huge, delicious food. Biggest mayfly they've seen since the drakes kind of moved on in mid-June. So anyway, that's stuff to look forward to on the spring creeks. Again, same thing. Water comes up a little bit this week, gets a little bit off color. Streamer fishing's been pretty good. So let's move to the warm water fisheries, where I've been for the last couple of months. Every day, shoulders are a little sore from rowing a lot. We've been catching a lot of fish. It's been one of the best years I can remember on the South Fork of the Shenandoah. So the river's in great cycle. Every size class of fish is there. 3 inches, 5 inches, 8 inches, 15 inches, 18 inches, 20 inches. They're all there. The river is absolutely full. And this is one of the first low water years we've had in like 3 or 4 years. So some people see rocks sticking up through the river and they're like, man, how are you getting down the water? Well, we're used to this. I mean, the boats that we have are made to go in 1.5 inches of water. And the smaller you make these rivers, the more it kind of stacks the fish up. They get competitive. The stargrasses have grown up like they haven't in years. So all the bait is tucked away in the stargrass, which means the fish are having to jump out of the river and eat damselflies and bust bait up in the shallows. So it's been really exciting, really visual. Lots of good topwater action. With the rain coming this week, it could kind of reset a little bit. When we haven't had rain in a long time, things tend to get dirty easier. So even if you don't see big spikes in the gauges, turbidity will probably be an issue. It's kind of part of the reason we're going to be missing a couple days here. It's just like when you haven't dusted your house in 2 months, things get a little bit built up. That's what happens when it doesn't rain for months. And all of a sudden you get a big shot of it and it all goes in the river and water can get really off color. So if that's the case, and we're fishing a dirty river, which we had a couple of dirty days this past week due to thunderstorms, you want to go down and you want to fish your critter mites and fish your crayfish. Black and blue is a really good color for those who are wondering what color to fish, bouncing on the bottom. The helger mites are really active. If you're floating the river these days, you can see the dobson fly eggs all over the trees and branches, so you know they're there and they're eating them. If we don't get dirty, or after this settles down and we're heading through the end of August into September, the topwater bite has been really good, the best in years. So a lower, clearer river gives you the opportunity to fish on the surface more. Shenandoah blue poppers, imitating damselflies, really important fly. And also divers, frog divers. This one's fire tiger. If the water's a little bit deeper and a little bit more colored, or let's say you're fishing some water that's moving and riffly, I tend to go with the frog because you can kind of make a little more noise and draw their attention. When you're in that smooth, calm, shallow, what we call pace water, I go with the bug. It's a little bit, it's just like fishing a fine dry fly. You just let it hit, you let them hear it. You don't really move it a ton, maybe just wiggle it around. People like to pop them, but nothing on the river pops, so you can scare the fish. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. We'll check in with you guys. We'll see what this weather does. Thanks for doing the rain dance. And this would really help our fishing going through the next couple of weeks. And maybe, just maybe, it'll change the whole weather pattern around. It's happened in the past, the first big tropical storm, and all of a sudden we just keep getting rain after it. So anyway, that's it. We'll catch you guys next week.